Alright guys, welcome to this new video, and today I want to talk about the dollar Swiss pair because it has been putting in quite some nice price action lately, especially for people that trade the Wyckoff method or that are familiar with my way of trading. So let's dive into the chart. As you can see on this particular range, we had an accumulation range. And I want to dive into the range and show you exactly the phases and why I know it's an accumulation range instead of a redistribution range, and then also how I entered on this trade, my target. Alright, so we always start with phase A, and this is the preliminary support. Why is it the preliminary support? Because there's a big move to the downside. We have had that big move previously during the downtrend, but look at the rejection to the upside. That's very important to notice because it's an aggressive move to the upside, which we have over here. As you can see, we didn't have it over here, we didn't have it over here, we didn't have it over here, only here, but this is just the beginning of the downtrend. As you can see, this was massive structure. Once it breaks, the downtrend is confirmed, and we didn't have any similar reaction after a big move to the downside as we had here. So this is the preliminary support. Last week I got asked a question. Someone showed me a chart and it was only in phase A of an accumulation range, and he showed me how to trade it, and I said phase A is way too early to pull any conclusions about where to enter, etc. Phase A is only something like a heads up, something like pay attention, because there might be a change in trend, but nothing is confirmed yet. So when we go further into phase A, we have the selling climax, and this again, big move to the downside, strong candles, but a decent reaction to the upside. And the most decent reaction actually comes over here. Look at that move. We haven't seen it in any previous retracement during this entire downtrend. This was the entire downtrend, and we haven't seen it in any previous retracement. So that's very telling, and this is called the change of character. And that's something I always want to see during accumulation range. That's really one of the most important parts of an accumulation range. So as of phase analysis, people will most likely say this is phase B. To me, it's still phase A because of the change of character that happens. So phase A is this entire part. Then we get into phase B, which is this, which is smaller. But phase B is always characterized by up and down movements, not really that much happening. Is exactly what we have here. It's also what we had during phase A over here, but as I said, I always want to see the change of character in phase A. Maybe some people would say this is phase A and then this is the entire phase B. You could, like I explain in my courses, the phase analysis is not that important where anything is happening. The only thing that's important is the clear selling climax and the clear changes of character, and then you want to see a clear range and absorption of supply and demand in the right areas, and that's the most important. So the trading range is developing right now, or was developing, as you can see here. This is the lower boundary of the range. The SC, the selling climax, didn't get broken. The upper side of the range isn't that clear, but to me, around here is the upper side of the range. You do have some minor levels in between, but this is the upper side of the range. And if we take a look at previous price action, this high is the upside of the range. So it's not a clear level, but it's a zone, and people could say this is also an important zone. As you can see, price also retested this. But so that's your phase B. Phase C is the spring. And as I said earlier, you want to see strong moves after a spring. So you don't want price to be sitting around below this range, but you really want to see a strong move relatively quickly back into the range. And that's exactly what happened over here. So the low of the range got broken, liquidity being absorbed, and then a strong move to the upside. So this is another change of character during phase C, and that's exactly my confirmation to enter a trade. So what's important about the spring is that if you look to the left at this blue level, you can see that it also took out a low, and some people might think this low isn't significant, but to me it is, because this low is the last low the market made before this entire move to the upside. And that's important to me. So this becomes an important of a swing point of decent importance. And as we see, the low of the range broke, but also this low broke. So there's quite some liquidity being triggered below this range, and then it's being absorbed, as you can see, from this big candle. So that's to me the confirmation. So that's phase C. Phase D is happening over here, and that's my entry spot. So this is phase D. As I said, this to me is the high of the range, and we broke and closed above it. So that's to me is the confirmation. Some people would wait for this to go. I personally don't, but it's up to you how you trade. So that's phase D, and that's the red line is my entry. So the close above this level, as you can see, that candle closed above. So that's my entry. Again, people will be trading from a retest. I don't. I trade the breakout. However, I am working on scaling in at retracements to increase my performance. So the red line is my entry, the green line is my target, and this target is based on statistics, because on the daily time frame there was a mechanical bias for me, which I've backtested over the past 10 years, and showed to me that there was around a 64% chance of hitting this upper green line before taking out the spring of the range. So that became my target. As you can see, it also is previous structure. So that's very nice to see always that the structure lines up with your target. Stop loss is the lower green line, which is below this massive candle, because if price comes back to this lower green line, it will also take out the spring in 99% of the cases I've tested this on. So my risk reward is a bit better than 1-to-1. As you see, if we flip, it's around 1.3, but 64% chance of hitting target. So it's a decent edge on the setup. And looking at all the discretionary confluence, like the market structure and the clear accumulation range, it's really a nice high probability setup for me. And it hit target very, very quickly. Usually it doesn't happen this quickly, but it did on this one. So another thing I wanted to talk about is on this chart. Let me first clean it up. Also, one thing you can see that happened is a retest of the high of the range. So this is the higher end of the range, and it price retested and then made a new move. And that's often what happens in accumulation. If you're familiar with the schematics, you get an accumulation range, you get a breakout. So you get this range forming, spring, breakout, retest, and then another move to the upside. That's usually how the market works. As I said, I don't enter on a retest, I enter on the breakout because I want to capture the initial momentum. But if you trade on a retest, this high should be the first target because of the liquidity that will be resting above this high. So another thing, I want to talk about this range happening over here. And this range happens during the Asian session at around London. We got a false breakout if we zoom in. I also want to illustrate that once again, the spring of the UTAD, as we call it in distribution, took out this green line. And as you can see, this high, it might be hard to spot, so let me zoom in. This high of this candle is once again the last high price made before this massive move to the downside. So once again, this is an high of decent importance, and I always take note of these spots. So let's zoom into the lower time frame to show you what I was talking about. Look at that, a small break and then a clear move to the downside, and this is a distribution range on the lower time frame. So as I said, the bias is bullish because of this accumulation range, and I'm already out of the long trade. I also didn't take this trade, but it's a very clear distribution range, so I wanted to illustrate it. So you have the high forming. This is the Asian range. A part of it at least is the Asian range. But what's important is look at the move to the upside and then the breakdown. This is happening during London Open, and that's very important. So once again, you got this buying climax. It's not as clear like a textbook example, but it's still to me, an distribution range. And I also posted this on Telegram to show people. I asked them, what do you think this is? And a lot of people said reaccumulation, which I didn't really understand, because there were clear signs that this was going to be a small distribution range. First of all, the preliminary supply is very, very obvious. There was a very strong move to the upside and then a clear pause in the uptrend. We did have that before, but this was telling to me as the moves were stronger. Then the buying climax isn't that clear, but as I said, this isn't really a textbook example. What is clear is the range forming and the high taking out the upper side of the range. And also the location, because of this high being taken out on the left, which is also near previous structure. So the location was very important on this trade. Previous structure, it went to the high of the previous structure, which was important to the markets, then broke it, and it also broke the high of the range. So there was liquidity above here, and it all had been triggered. And then afterwards, we get this strong move to the downside, and that to me confirmed that this was distribution. As you look back over the previous trend, you didn't have the same aggression, the same strength to the downside previously. So that's a change of character, and that's important. And then we got this close to the range. Once again, that's always where I enter. So the stop would be above here if I traded this on the lower time frame, and the target would be at a statistical target, so I can't draw it in right here, but this is the first level of structure. So this is where I would take my profit, which would be around the 1.8 R. As you can see, price moved lower to test this low, or this high I mean, but that's how I would have traded it if I traded this on a lower time frame. But I wanted to explain why this is not reaccumulation. First of all, the preliminary supply, so that's number one. That's very, very telling. So a strong move and a clear pause in the trend. The second thing is the clear range forming. So basically generating liquidity at both sides of the range. Third thing is UTAD taking out high of range plus important swing point. And number 4 is the change of character after the UTAD. So this to me was why this was a distribution range. If this would have been a reaccumulation range, the location would have been different. I wouldn't be looking at reaccumulation happening after such an important high being taken out, and after this preliminary supply, a reaccumulation range would have been very different, and especially the change of character after the UTAD gave it away. If price went to the lower part of the range and then quickly made a move like this, then it would be reaccumulation. But as I said, the change of character and the location were very important, so this was clear distribution to me. And then you had your redistribution over here. Once again, as you can see, the high gets taken, double top forming, high being taken out, and then the next leg to the downside is forming, so structure breaks. And as you can see, now we have this bullish momentum going, making a new high. I'm expecting price to tag this double top area before taking out any significant lows, because this accumulation range was very obvious. So I'm not trading like this. I want to see a bias forming, but if you are going to trade this pair, I would definitely have a long bias, at least towards this important swing points. I'm expecting some rejection there because of this move to the downside it created, and also this previous structure, but the ultimate target would be this swing high. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this video, and I hope it has been clear, and I speak to you guys in the next video.